G'day, I'm Adam Gordon, the Profit Seek Detective, and a very warm welcome to this Cash Optimisation Report, a 5-minute interview where we give you some immediate practical tips on how to improve the cash flow and profitability in your business. Now, have you thought about reaching the top of your business, about excellence in business and what it would mean for your business? I can think of 3 good reasons why excellence in business is important. Excellent businesses are more profitable and more sustainable. They grow faster. And as an owner or manager, you're much less likely to have sleepless nights worrying about cash flow and profitability and have more time to spend with your family. Excellent businesses are good for people who work in them, increasing employment and skills development opportunities. And they're also good for the community you're in. They benefit, they lift the community. Can you imagine a community that has poor businesses? Those with excellent, good businesses are always better communities to have around. Yeah, and this is an interesting figure. 70% of businesses fail to achieve their full potential, and yet they're nearly there. All the components are in place. It's just that they're missing the essential source that provides the coherence and alignment in their business. Now, I'm interviewing Michael Voss from michaelvossnz.com to discuss this very dilemma, how to transform your business and take it to the top. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Adam. Delighted to be here.
Great. Now, for those of you who don't know Michael, he helps leaders grow personally so they can lead their businesses to the top using business excellence principles and practices that are based on the accumulated knowledge from the best organisations in the world. And he's a speaker, consultant, coach and advisor, skilled at providing advice at all levels of organisations to develop sustainable high growth strategies. And he's passionate about driving high-performance change. Mike has worked for the New Zealand and US governments, and he's worked in private enterprise before setting up his own business improvement consultancy in 1999. He's worked with the Baldridge Business Excellence model for over 20 years. Now, for those of you in Australia, you may be familiar with the Australian Business Excellence Framework, which is based on the Baldridge model. And I personally find it a great model to work with. I've used it before. I've used it with clients. He's designed award programs, trained judges, examiners and award applicants, led evaluation teams and been involved in assessing hundreds of organisations from 2-person partnerships to multi-site companies in New Zealand and overseas. Michael's a recognised go-to bloke for unlocking the barriers to growth in companies of all sizes and across all industries. And is the author of a soon-to-be released book, The 7 Must-Have High-Performance Tools for Driving High-Growth Businesses. He blogs at michaelvossnz.com and runs regular webinars on integrating management systems and driving business growth. Now, Michael, are you ready? You ready to go?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go from now. First question. I noticed from your LinkedIn profile that you describe yourself as a high-growth business enabler. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, look, good question, Adam. I love the challenge of transforming businesses, and I love working with leaders and seeing them to personally grow. And many are really appreciative of what I've helped them to do. And before long, if I'm not careful, I end up being deeply involved in the day-to-day running of the business. And I'm sure that's something that you would appreciate too.
Indeed.
In your game. You know, a number of times I actually did this, and it took me a while to extract myself from their businesses, and it's a pretty painful thing to do, you know, when you get that deeply involved in the day-to-day running of business. So I see myself as working to impart those essential knowledge and take people through that transformation, a bit like a coach, not actually doing the work, but showing others how it should be done and really supporting them along the way. So I really see myself as an enabler, that enabler of high growth.
Right, yep, yes. I was working or talking with someone recently who was had been a school teacher, and he said he didn't see himself as a teacher, but as an educator.
Yeah.
And sounds like much the same thing you're talking about. Okay, yeah. Second question. What were the frustrations when you started out?
Yeah, look, when I first started out in business, I really thought that, you know, I was quite passionate about excellence, and I thought, you know, when I mentioned the word excellence, everybody would be, you know, beating down the door and, you know, wanting to get my help and all the rest of it. And I guess I was really lucky early on because I had some people who I had a really, really good network of fellow evaluators like I was. And those people knew my skills and capability probably better than I did. And I was very lucky I got that work that I needed. But after a while, I realized that these people, what they valued in me was quite different to what I thought I was actually trying to deliver to those people. And the reality was that I found out they actually didn't care about excellence. They didn't care what I knew. And it's very much the same comment as you made earlier. What these people wanted, they had a problem that they needed to have fixed. And they came to me because they knew that I could solve their problems for them. I'd proven that I'd been able to do that in the past, and that was what they valued in me. So rather than me trying to say to them, hey, look, what you need is excellence, what I needed to do first of all is sit down with them and understand their business and understand what their problem was.
Yes.
And then apply what I knew to their problem to solve their problem. I guess none of this is no surprise to you because as the Profit Select detective, that's exactly what you do as well, I suspect.
All right. If they're not as profitable as they should be, there's almost always a leak there somewhere. They just don't know where it is. In fact, they don't even recognise they've got one.
Yeah.
They knew they had it, they could solve it, they could plug it.
Yeah, dead right.
Okay. So how do you apply excellence to business?
Yeah, look, I after the realisation that I found that this excellence practice is just absolutely brilliant in solving problems in businesses, I then looked at the whole awards program and thought, well, this is far too lengthy and far too expensive for most organisations to actually go through. And so I spent about 10 years just working through it and saying, look, there has to be an easier way. And along the way, I spent a lot of time thinking and wondering how we could do this. And really what I perfected, and I've developed a number of tools, one tool which I call Assessor, which is a card-based assessment program, and really chops down what normally takes months for a business to do before they get their feedback report, which tells them what opportunities for improvement they've got. It chops that down from months, basically down to a couple of days.
All right, that's very good.
Yeah, and I've even got simplified some businesses because not everybody's at that level. So I've simplified it and made it for really suitable for small to medium businesses, and you would appreciate this. Australia and New Zealand's full of small businesses.
It's the majority of businesses are small businesses. Yeah,
that's dead right. So how do you, in a small business, apply the brilliance that's embodied within excellence, but make a difference for a small business? So I've got tools that you can do an assessment in a few hours.
Right.
Sure they're not as sophisticated as the others, but for organisations that are not as mature as, scoring, really, really high up on the Baldrige framework scoring, businesses just starting out, absolutely perfect and most appropriate for businesses just starting out. So, yeah, I found that was really, quite a key step. And I think the other thing, better still, and I found that people can actually use their assessments to actually track their improvements to the business against and map them against their financial results. And I think it's making that connection. Businesses, who just track their financials, of course we all know financials are lag measures.
Yes, exactly.
They're not going to help us with strategically where the business is going. So I think Baldrige, the framework can actually provide you with some nice lead measures and connect those up with some lag measures like financials is very, very powerful for any organisation to get involved with.
Well, there's no doubt that financials are a picture of the past.
Yeah.
And you do need to, if you like radar, to look ahead.
Yeah, right.
To let you know what's happening, yeah. Okay, so how would you suggest our listeners get started?
Well, the best way to get started, I think, is by starting to measure the maturity of your business. And really, and I think the sooner people start to do that, because I strike this, another part of my work is associated with working with ISO certified businesses. And of course, people have got that ISO certificate on the wall. They actually don't know how they stack up against world-class organisations. And quite often, some of them think they're absolutely exceptional businesses, and then we carry out an assessment, and they suddenly realise, wow, hang on, a bit like the ice creams at the sand. It's a bit deflating. But so we've actually developed a very simple tool that we call a Summit Readiness Grid, and it's something that you can very quickly, people can very quickly, in just a few minutes, just measure the maturity of their business. And that's really the way to get started. And instantly they can see, here's the low-hanging fruit, here's the stuff that if I worked on now, I could actually lift my business performance, and just in a few moments. So that is the way to really get started.
Okay. And what results can people get from this?
Yeah, look, I think excellence been around for the past 20 years, and what amazes me is that it really has stood the test of time. And I think partly that's because it's non-prescriptive. It doesn't tell you what you should do. And I think most businesses I come across think that, they say ISO certification is where they need to be to get best practice. But what they don't realise is they would score around 180 to 250 points if they're ISO certified, meeting the standard. Of course, on the Baldridge framework scale out of a total of 1,000 points. And I think, when we compare that with world-class companies that are scoring around the 650 to 700 odd points, companies that are excellent really outperform those Standard & Poor's companies by, 4.4 to 1, and they grow twice as fast as the typical ISO certified company. So to me, it's an absolute no-brainer that organizations, whether or not they are on board with the ISO certification or not, any business can work exceptionally well and impart significant growth in their businesses if they start to use the Business Excellence Framework as a framework to take them on that high growth path. So that's certainly what the kind of results that people can get, a much faster growth rates from using.
Always, and that's, I guess, what I was alluding to in my thing, because I found when I work with our Business Excellence Awards, and like you, I've been a judge for the Telstra Business Awards and things like that. Excellent businesses are more profitable and more sustainable.
Yeah, no question about it.
Okay. Final question then, for the benefit of the listeners, can you just quickly go over the process?
Yes, look, we've developed essentially we call it a 4-step process, but we do have to start with a baseline. So really, we've got a 4-step process that we teach people to go through. And if you like, it's a 4-step continuous improvement process. But before we start the process, we always do a baseline assessment. Right. So we just measure where you are right now, because of course, if you don't know that, then you don't know how much you have improved. And of course, it's really important to be able to measure that and track performance.
Yeah, very true.
So that's where we measure where we currently are as a business and find out what areas are actually holding the business back. And then we're ready to use our 4-step process. So step 1 is to do a deep dive and assessment into that area which looks like it's holding the organisation back, and to actually go and then specifically target which areas of the business from a process perspective need work.
Right. Yep.
So that's for step 1 is that assessment. Then we go into step 2, which is really involving just planning. Okay, well, we know what's ailing. Now, what do we plan to do about that? So in very specific terms, put together a specific plan that's going to meet that particular need of filling that gap. Step 3 involves really taking that action, and step 4 is about going back and reassessing and saying, okay, well, how much learning have we actually made? How much have we lifted the maturity of our organisation? How much have we grown? And what are the results that we're actually going to see from this? So typically people who go through this process, we normally take them through a 12-week program. They can do 1 cycle of that. And we've got our program called our Basecamp program, which is a 12-month program, which enables people to go essentially up, 2, typically 3 cycles around that loop in a 12-month period, and typically get themselves way up to around the 500 odd points over a 12-month period. So that's the way that the process works.
Very much plan, do, check, act.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, that's great, Michael. Look, I'm sure our listeners, our viewers will find that really interesting. Where can people go to get more informational resources?
Well, they can have a look at my website, michaelvossnz.com. That's the place to go to. And all of the things to do with business excellence, we've given it a climbing Mount Everest analogy. So if they look up the summit program, which I think you alluded to earlier, how do you take your business to the summit? Just like Ed Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing did in 1953 when they conquered Mount Cook. Mount Everest. No, I wish it was Mount Cook, but no, did a much better job than that.
Okay. Well, that's really good, Michael. I do thank you for that and for those insights, and we'll make this available to certainly to my list and to the wider market. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks very much for the opportunity, Adam, to speak to you today.
A pleasure.